I would like to welcome Nazgol Ansarinia to this event, which is taking place in conjunction with an exhibition of contemporary Iranian art at the Asia Society Museum in New York. I'm referring to rebel Jester, mystic poets, contemporary Persians. As the curator of this show, I selected 27 works by 23 artists from the Mohammed Afkhami Collection, and my focus was on the contemporary art of the past 25 years. The show was conceived for its first venue at the Aga Khan Museum in Toronto, Canada. It then traveled to the Museum of Fine Arts in Houston, and it is currently on view in New York until May 8th. In this show, we have two works by Nazgol, and I will show them a little later on, in a little while. So now, to give you just a sense of her biography, I'm going to say a few words. Nazgol Ansarinia was born in Tehran, where she's currently living and working. She graduated from the London College of Communication in 2001, before taking a Master of Fine Arts at the California College of the Arts in San Francisco in 2003. Scanning the city and drawing inspiration from the urban life of people from different social backgrounds, she creates works that speak to wider socioeconomic systems operating in Iran. Her vignettes are culled from outdoor activities such as motorcyclists braving security issues and giving ride to several family members, or from indoor activities such as parties featuring young people dancing or bureaucrats sipping tea at work in their offices. Ansarinia utilizes a range of media, including sculpture, installation, drawing, and video. She has been featured in several group exhibitions around the world. Among them, I will only mention a few biennials and triennials, those in Brisbane, Australia, Sharjah in the Emirates, and Venice in Italy. Before the current exhibition at Asia Society, I was lucky to have worked with her on Sapphire Voyage, an exhibition I organized in Vancouver in 2013. She has had solo exhibitions in Tehran, London, Paris, Dubai, and Milan, among others. Among them, I would like to cite a major exhibition at the Pejman Foundation, whose architect Ahmad Reza Shviker is the founder of the New York-based firm ASA North. He transformed this former brewery into what is also known as the Argo Factory. You'll see some images later on. Ansarinia's work is included in the collections of the Queensland Art Gallery, the Los Angeles County Museum of Art, the Tate Gallery in London, and the British Museum. She was awarded the Abraj Art Prize in March of 2009. We will see the work for which she earns that prize again in this interview. Before tackling her work, I would like to ask her one question regarding your academic training. What did you focus on at the London College of Communication? Nazgol.
First of all, hello everybody, and thank you for the invitation to have this conversation. My area of focus, I was studying graphic and media design, but at the time we also had to focus on a certain aspect, and my area of focus was in information design. For the last 2 years of the 3-year program, the BA that we were doing, my focus was mainly on using or sort of not necessarily simplifying information, but making information more available and understandable and accessible through graphic design.
Okay. All right. Yeah. So in this conversation, I think I told you about this before. I think it's better if we focus on a few themes because it's not going to be possible to cover your entire Earth. So let us start with carpets. Carpet patterns and carpets. Two examples of which, one example of which is in the show that you are seeing on the left. At first glance, these patterns recall the kind of floral or vegetal arabesques that abound in traditional Persian carpets like the one you see on the right. But at closer scrutiny, you see an entire population of figures seen outdoors or on TV, in offices, etc. Mostly you bring outdoor into this domestic space, which is the natural habitat of carpets. Maybe you can help us identify each vignette and then explain to us how you make these digital drawings and if you create them as unique pieces or they come in additions. So I'm going to show you one detail, for instance, in the borders. This is one detail. Can you identify what these figures are doing?
Yeah, so if we start from the left, there's this guy who's like spinning like a little chain or a tasbih, you know, I don't know what it's called, these beads that you
prayer beads, yeah.
Yeah, we use it for relaxation. So when when you cross, like when you're in the bazaar, or you could see some store owners or just people who are young guys who are hanging out, and this is just a way to kill time. You know, they're just like standing there, like spinning this little chain or tasbih. So it's just it's that, and you can see, as you see, he's like it's like a little animation that this chain is going around.
Yeah, I see.
In the middle, you have like a little boy who's reaching out for like a bread, this traditional Iranian bread, sangak. And then on the right, you have Iranian, not wrestlers, but traditional, what do you call it? This traditional sport, Zurkhane, I don't know.
Zurkhane, yeah, right. Okay.
So let me, do you want me to give like a little background about how these images are accumulated and the background about the story of the project patterns coming into being? So I started with the project patterns quite, I think in the second year that I returned to Iran, so around 2006. I have to say, after living abroad for about 7 years, I would come to Iran for summers, for visits. But then when I decided to move, and after a year or two, I was really, I can say I was overwhelmed with all the things that I was exposed to. It was the first time that I was experiencing Tehran as an adult. So I was moving around freely. I was no longer a schoolgirl. So I was moving around the city, trying to explore as much as possible. And I was overwhelmed with all that was going on around me, with the images, with the interactions, with what was going on in architecturally wise, what was going on in the walls. So I would just make notes. Either I would do like a little sketch, or I would make a note about something that had happened to me or something that I had seen. So after a while, I had an accumulation of, or I would take photos or even like little short videos of things. on the street. And after a while, I had an accumulation of many things that were not in any way related to each other. The only thing that connected to them to each other was that they were seen by me, or I had experienced them, or they were my interactions. And I was looking for a way of bringing all of these together and creating some kind of coherence or some kind of connection among them. And that's when my attention came to the Persian carpet and as an image, because it's made out of so many small fragments, yet everything is connected to each other, as you said, through the sort of floral patterns or geometric shapes. Everything is connected to each other. So I thought, if I start to insert these images or use the carpet, the structure of the carpet, as a way of connecting all of these incidents, images, all of the things that I was exposed to, maybe I can create some kind of make sense out of them. So this is how the project started. I originally didn't start with these large carpets. I would only bring one or two subjects together, then create a repetition, and then add these floral patterns to them to create like a sort of small image that resembled a pattern of a Persian carpet. Later on, as I started to feel comfortable and learn how to mix these things together, then I moved to the large works that you show one example of.
Yeah. Okay. So maybe we can proceed with you identifying what we're looking at. I've taken some images, some details of your pattern. Yeah, for instance, here, what are we looking at?
These are based on the photographs I took from a TV screen. So these are news reporters or people who are presenting something on Iranian television. And
you have both male and female.
Yes.
Yeah. Yes. And here?
And here it's again like the guy with the chain. It's the one office worker who's drinking tea, and you see the actions of like him picking up the cup and putting it back.
Yeah. Like an animation. Yes. That's interesting. I had not noticed that. Yeah. Okay. And here you have the satellite dishes.
Yes.
And then how about?
These are from the Muharram processions, from these sort of the bands that walk with the daster and they play the drums.
Yeah.
So actually you see a lot of, as I mentioned, you see a lot of these sort of movements in most of where you see the carpet, there's an action happening. Like
Yeah, right.
That's where the repetition comes in.
I see. And here you have sort of veiled women sitting around a sofre, offering of food.
Yes, again, this is like another, like a gathering for ladies where there is this they're done for religious occasions, and afterwards they serve food. So sofre, basically.
And what I find interesting is that you incorporate different social classes. The people, these women sitting on the floor around this food gathering, around this food, the dishes. I don't see them to belong to the same social class as these young men, dressed in a very sort of Western way. What are your thoughts about this?
This one is, it's sort of about like bribery. Each one is putting something in the pocket of the other one, and they're unknown. So there's about these sort of connections and relationships.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then you have the famous motorcyclists that one sees in Tehran.
Yes. Yes. Yeah, with this one, you see that this guy is riding alone, then he has his wife, and then the children join him. So this is how they, it gets bigger and bigger, the people who is carrying.
Who's carrying, yeah. And then these are women and men standing in line, right?
Yes, this is again for the Muharram, where you get Nazri, where you get somebody cooks like a huge amount of food and offers it as a, I don't know if it's like a blessing, or you get the food, and the food it's blessed. It's supposed to heal your illnesses.
Right.
People are standing in line.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And this is how you wish these carpet patterns to be displayed as carpets on the floor. Unfortunately, in none of the three venues, in none of them, I had enough space to do that. So I hung the work on the wall. But here you see it installed at the Pejman Foundation that I was telling you about, that I was discussing before.
Yes, this is how they were originally shown, and every time there is space, this is how they're shown.
They're shown. Okay. And let's talk a little bit about this other carpet, which is not in the show, but it's the carpet that earned you the Abraj Prize. Can you tell me a little bit about it, where it was made, and the subject matter?
So I was already making the drawings, the large drawings, when my friend and collaborator, curator Leila Fakhr saw the announcement for the Abraj prize, and we decided to, because at the time you had to apply as an artist curator duo. So we proposed for one of these drawings to be translated into a handmade carpet. And yeah, so basically, I mean, when I made the proposals with the drawings I had, and when I got the prize was set in a way that it would help you to produce the work, and this is a very costly thing to do, a timely and costly thing to do to make a handmade carpet. So at the time, I have to say, I really didn't know how to translate these drawings into, like patterns that could be read by carpet weavers. So it was quite like a big challenge and a process to first translate those drawings into carpet maps, and then also find a workshop that was willing to work on this. I learned that you have to have very, very skilled workers, weavers to be able to translate any maps, because most of the time each region has its own style of carpet making, and the weavers are only used and they only know how to do that. But Tabriz is one of the places that does a lot of figurative carpets. Like you can give them a photograph and they translate it into a carpet. So they have very, very skilled workers. So for that reason, I decided to have the carpet made in Tabriz and started to work with a workshop. We had a very short time for a carpet this large. We had about 9 months. And this is an 8-meter carpet. So we had 4 people working on 2 shifts. At the beginning, everybody was very skeptical about the whole project. They were making fun of the drawings and all, but then after a while, they really got into it, and they had their own interpretations of what these mean. And so yeah, for me it was an amazing experience.
Okay. Where is this carpet right now?
This is now part of the Jamil Art Foundation.
Jamil Art Foundation. Yeah, okay. And I'm showing you here two details. The party goers in the corner, and then you have again a gathering of women around food.
Yes, in the center, yeah.
The motorcyclists, you find them in the borders. And then here, can you tell me what this is about?
This is a street fight, you know, where when there's, you know, like a little car accident, and everybody on the street gets involved and takes sides. So as this arabesque sort of turns, you have more and more. I mean, it starts with two, and then you have more people gathering. It just when it goes to the middle.
Yeah. Okay. Now, just to here. Oh, yeah. Here, this is how I installed your work in Vancouver, and in fact, your piece came to represent Tehran in that context, which makes a lot of sense because a lot of inspiration comes from the city, from Tehran, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, absolutely.
And now, just sort of to broaden the context and bring in artists from other regions who've worked with carpets, I'm just showing three works by three different artists. Mona Hatoum, here you see her prayer mat, which is made of brass pins and a compass. And so, being a Palestinian, always in exile in all her life. The terrain here is very inhospitable. You cannot really step on it. And also the compass gives you this idea of orientation or disorientation. And then you have Shirana Shahbazi, an Iranian, who is more interested in the migration of iconography, of subject matter. Because this woman, in fact, she could very well be sort of a woman for an Western advertisement. But then she has translated that. She has translated into Persian carpets. And then you have Mike Kelly here. Oops, sorry. Mike Kelly, who's of Irish origin, he based this carpet on a carpet he saw at the Metropolitan Museum of Art. But then he inserts his own narrative here. For instance, his Irish background comes across with this trefoil shamrock down here. And then he also replaced the original red color of the carpet with green, which is again a reference to his Irish background. Now let's maybe move on to this other work you had at the Peshman Foundation, this carpet here that you have juxtaposed to a Louis XV elaborate chair. Can you tell me a little bit more about this work, this Mending? I think it's called Mending series.
Sure. This is as you said, it's a series. Apart from the chair, that I've made the same kind of gesture with the other chairs as well, a few other styles as well. There's a set of plates that have been cut, a mirror, and a mattress. So the concept about the whole project Mendings revolves around the idea of sort of going back to a supposedly normal state after a trauma or a dramatic experience. So this is a very, very, very personal project for me. I went through a sort of, let's say, like a near-death experience, and after a couple of months where everything was back to normal, but this was the experience I had sort of made everything different. Everything felt different. So I wanted to find a reflection of how I felt in the everyday objects. So I thought that everything, what I did was I took about 1/3 of every object away, and then I put them back together and I mended them. But the way I've done it is that everything is still functional. You can still sit in the chair, you can still have the carpet on the floor, still use the mirror, but each of them creates an interruption, and they are reminded, they're a reminder of the trauma. So the carpet in this case has a scar in the middle and it's raised. So if you have it on the floor, it makes you trip over it all the time. Or the mirror always breaks your image. So this is, I tried to sort of use objects that you could find in any Iranian household. For example, the sort of the fake Louis XVI chair is a very common household.
The mending reminds me of sutures, something that has been impaired, something, as you said, that was whole at one point and then damaged. So you do get that sense. But, now for me, the juxtaposition of the Louis XV's chair, this sort of you see it better here. Louis XV chair and this carpet, they somehow, after all, we all bring our own visual baggage with us. To me, somehow they remind me of a certain official gathering, official meetings in Iran. But they also remind me of works that were done by Gabriel Orozco, who also did the same practice. He removed the center of the Citroën, which is also called La Déesse, meaning déesse also standing for goddess. So it's sort of an inspiration that is incomplete. There's something dysfunctional about it, and basically that's my sort of take on these, in a sense, disturbing pieces. They're just quite disturbing, all of them.
Yes. As I said, it's about not like a physical injury, but an injury, about a trauma. So
the memory of that trauma is reflected in them. Yeah, right. Oh, okay. So now let's move to the next theme after carpets, architecture. And maybe you'd like to give us a little bit of explanation on the first series on fabrication, on this series.
Yes. So as I spent more and more time in Tehran, I sort of moved from the domestic space. The stories I was bringing to the carpet was a lot about the city, but still was coming back to the domestic space. Also the projects, with the mendings, with living room, everything sort of revolved around the domestic space. But as I felt sort of more comfortable and got to know the city more, I shifted my focus in what was happening in the city and the changes I was seeing in the city. I've for a very long time, I've been interested in what goes on the walls of the city, namely murals, and I've been collecting sort of, or documenting these the things that appear on the walls. So this was the second project that I was doing about what goes on the walls, like the official, not the graffiti and stuff like that, but what is officially going on the walls of the city. So the murals have been part of, an inseparable part of the image of Tehran after the war years, when I was growing up in Iran during the years of Iran-Iraq war, the city had a lot of images of the martyrs, of the people who got killed in the Iran-Iraq war. And slowly, as the city sort of after the war, the city wanted to have like almost a facelift, making it, the municipality wanted to make Tehran maybe less gray, less sad. So as let's say parallelly, advertisement suddenly became a part of the city, because before we didn't have billboards and there were no advertising. So advertising was appearing everywhere. At the same time, municipality was also adding some images of like colorful images to the city through the murals. And these images were changing every few years for various reasons. I mean, you can't maintain them for many years because of the pollution, because of the weather. So you have to repaint them, and every time they repainted them, new images went up. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I noticed that around the time that I started to work on the project Fabrications, there was a lot of images of traditional Iranian architecture that was being painted on the already existing architecture. And they had this sort of surreal or, let's say, escapist kind of visuals. They were these sort of trompe l'oeil kind of images where they were mixing elements of the already existing architecture with what was being painted. So I don't know if the image on the right, there's a part of the facade of the building that has continued to the painting. So in a way, there was already this mixing of the two architectures happening. And I thought to myself, well, what happens if I take this one step further? And if the artist or the municipality is trying to create an illusion of this three-dimensional space, like let's say, for example, what we see here, this mosque, what happens if I make it three-dimensional and make it into, give it some kind of reality, taking it to the third dimension. So this project is a collaboration with a friend of mine who's an architect, Rouzbeh Elias Azar. And what we did was we selected 5 of these images, 5 of these murals, and we sort of discussed the ways of how this two-dimensional painting can be translated to three-dimensional, because once you start to think about that, there are a lot of questions of how, there are many ways of putting these two buildings together.
Yeah, but you don't use any color in your fabrications. Mm-hmm. So they're much more abstract, even though they're more physical as architectural pieces, and yet they're very abstract because they are sort of devoid of color. So I don't know if you want to say and add anything to that.
Yeah, I did some tests with color, but what was very important to me in this particular project, and which led also to the technique I used for the production. These are 3D prints, which at the time was quite new technology, but I wanted to have them blend into each other as much as possible, so you couldn't tell where one was starting and the other one was ending. I wanted these things to be like one solid object, and there would be no joints, so color would only sort of separate these two buildings. I really wanted them to be like a unified architecture, where you had to sort of imagine that would enter this commercial building, but then end up in the mosque, so that they would really be joined. This is the reason I decided not to have any color.
And they're unique pieces, right? Or they come in an edition?
No, they're edition of 3.
A3. Okay, all right. Here I'm showing an installation shot from one of your gallery shows in Dubai. Dubai, right?
Yes.
This is in Dubai. And I was wondering if you could tell us a little bit more about this membrane, which seems to record the memory of what it used to be.
Yes. So this is I mean, I don't know if I can call it a project because it's only one piece. It took a year to make it, but only one piece came out of it. I have some drawings, but it sort of came after fabrication. It was another way of looking at the walls and what was happening architecturally in the city. At the time, and still is, I mean, Tehran has these peaks of demolition and construction, then things stop for various economic reasons, then they pick up speed again. So at the time, again, when I was working on membrane, I could see a lot of demolition happening in the city. And what caught my attention at that time was what remained of the building that they demolished. So when they would take everything away, two of the walls would usually stay in put because they were stuck to the adjacent buildings. Mm-hmm. And for a while, you could see the sort of the cross section of somebody's, let's say, life, because often some very personal spaces like the bathrooms, the bedrooms, even like the closets, the inbuilt closets, would suddenly be exposed to the passerby. So and sort of it was this sort of like the skinning of this building that sort of felt sort of, I don't know, you can say even vulgar. So I kind of became interested in, let's say, finding a way of preserving this last layer of somebody, or let's say a family's life. And I didn't want to have, like, let's say, a direct casting of the wall, or to have like a chunky, bold sort of piece. I wanted to really have this very delicate skin-like object made. So I decided instead of going with, let's say, direct casting, I went with the process of scanning the wall, and then from that I created these molds, and then I sort of did so many experiments with material to find something that was delicate yet sturdy enough to, hold it. This is about 6 square. It's like 25 square meters, this whole piece. So it's a huge piece, but so it had to sort of be able to hold itself yet still feel fragile. So after much experiments, I came to this sort of formula with paper mache or paper to create these, to make a cast in a way that is paper thin. So this
is this the same piece you showed in the exhibition in Venice? The Spark Is You.
Yes,
it's the same one. Yeah. So you have only one such works. Yeah. Okay. And then I really love the idea of combining sociopolitical concerns and poetry, which shows in most of your works, in fact, and even also in these pillars. We have one in the show, Pillars, Article 47. And what is also interesting is that you call the series Pillars. Pillars usually stand at the bottom, sit at the bottom, and capitals stand on top. But what was your reasoning for using the term pillars for these constructions?
Yeah, they actually have both they're both pillars and capitals, but I was referring, because the inspiration for this whole project comes from, let's say, the pillars you can see in architecture in the newly built architecture that is become very popular in Tehran. So after, actually, again, pillars came after membrane. So much of what was being demolished was being replaced by this architecture that they call Roman classic in Tehran. And it's become very, very popular. They are, like all the proportions, all the let's say, all the classical rules are broken, but they sort of resemble these Romanesque kind of architecture, and there are a lot of pillars in these buildings. They don't have any function except for being let's say decorative. So I became interested in this sort of, let's say, ostentatious architecture that was being built, a lot of stone, a lot of sort of decoration, very different from what, let's say, the traditional or the values of traditional Iranian architecture, which is all about modesty, and it's all about everything happening in the inside, and nothing looks grandiose just on the outside. So I sort of became interested in this sort of this style and why it was becoming so popular. And this was also the waves of demolition and construction are very much tied into the economic trends that is happening in the country. One of the safest ways to invest your money is in property and in construction. So I sort of became interested in the relationship between economy and architecture, and also visually, I was interested in how all of these rules of classical, let's say, Roman architecture was being broken, but they just had this look that was called Roman classic. So I thought to myself that pretty much any shape, if it turned 360 degrees, can create something like a pillar or a capital. So what I did was I took the text, the articles from the Iranian constitution, the section on economy and financial affairs, and each of these texts, the sort of outline of them is turned 360 degrees and creates a shape that resembles a pillar or a capital. And this is how these works are created.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, which leads me to go on to the next theme, which is text, because text that you have inserted here also appears more like graffiti, like what you see in the streets. So can you tell me a little bit about this other direction?
Yeah, so this is the other project I was referring to when I said I did another project on what was going on the walls of Tehran. This is the second work I made when I moved back. The series is called Untitled, Do Not Give Your Opinion. And I again, paying attention to the city walls, I was interested in all of the moral advice that was on the walls. These are again all official sort of calligraphy. They're either done by the municipality or in the schools, they're done by the school. So it's all about giving advice to the citizens on how to be more polite, how to be, more patient, how to be better people. And again, if anybody has been in Tehran, it's a city of 12 million people. It's very hard to be patient and polite and gracious in a city that is just like, so much is happening. So I was interested in the fact that, they are not being read, and what I started to do was I started to collect all of the imperative verbs as much as I could see, and I photographed them and I repainted them originally in Sizdev, the 13 Banak Square gallery, which belonged to Feridun Ab, and at a time which was doing sort of non-commercial projects. It was a very experimental space. And then later I did this other one, Do Not Boast, at Argo Factory. It was a last work, as you would like make a round in the whole exhibition.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Iranians love to bombard you with advices. But then here, what's interesting is that this is not the language of graffiti, of rebellion, of dissidence. It's the language of authorities giving you certain more than advice, a bit more intimidating than advice. So that I find very interesting. And then finally, I think we get to this point when I would like to ask you more about your current work, because as you can see here, I'm showing an installation shot from your recent exhibition at Green Gallery in Dubai. And so can you please tell us what you've been concerned with recently?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so after many different projects about the city, another thing that caught my attention a little bit over 2 years ago, just before the outbreak of COVID, was the empty swimming pools of Tehran. Depending on which area you are, you can, if you go up on a high up building, you can see a lot of empty swimming pools in the middle of the summer in Tehran. And I was fascinated by all of these voids in the city, all of these sort of blue voids in the city. And so, I mean, they're a familiar sight, but what is interesting to me is the persistence in keeping these voids, because they could easily be turned into, filled with earth, to be turned into a garden, turned into a parking space. There's always shortage of space in the city, or there's generally shortage of space. So why keep a hole for many years in your back garden? So this is the focus of the project, Pools and Voids, why these voids have been kept for so many years. The reason that they're empty, there are various reasons. One of the most important is that the city is going up in height. So if you have a garden with a pool, you no longer have the privacy of using it, because people are able to look into your garden. So maybe people don't feel comfortable to use them. There is a shortage of water. So there's various reasons. Some of these houses, the children have moved away, so there's no reason to, fill the pools anymore. So there are various reasons, but again, my focus was why keep it, and keep it as it is, because sometimes even some of them were painted but not filled with water. So I sort of started to also look into the history of presence of water in Iranian architecture and how it holds, let's say, a sacred and symbolic place in Iranian architecture and in Iranian collective memory. Water has always, or like a shallow pool or hose, has always been in the center of Iranian architecture. So in a way, when the swimming pools were introduced to, let's say, urban cities like Tehran in the 50s and 60s and 70s, they were welcomed because already this water element had been there for years. So the shallow pool was then became this sort of swimming pool, a deeper hole. So for that reason, I mean, the pools are not just any containers, they're the containers of water. So even when they're empty, they are these containers and reminders of both the time that they had water, but they also are they're asking to be filled again. So they're about this hope for future. So you keep them for a day that maybe you can fill them again. Maybe there's no longer a shortage of water, or there's, there are various reasons that I think they hold this very special space in Iranian maybe psyche, and that's why they're sort of kept intact.
Right. Yeah. And I think maybe you can explain a little bit more about these structures.
Mm-hmm. So the whole project is based on one map of a municipality that I had access to of an area called Jordan, a neighborhood of 3 square kilometers. In this 3 square kilometers, there were 1,100 pools and shallow pools, hoses. So everything in this series is based on this map. What I started to do was when I saw
sorry to interrupt. Is this the map?
No. Well, it's based on the map, but I will tell you how these works have come. So what I did was, I mean, when I saw the number, I mean, the sheer number tells you something. I mean, if in 3 square kilometers, if you have 1,100 of anything, it means something. So for me, it was about this collective desire to have water, the presence of water in your domestic space. So what I did was, to speak about this collective desire, I started to connect these pools together. So first, in these smaller sculptures, which are called connected pools, they're also a little bit inspired sort of architecturally on the Iranian, like the hammam, and how each room has its own pool that you go from one to the other. So by connecting them, they sort of allow for the flowing of water, or imagining that water can flow from one to the other. So it's about this collective imagination, collective desire. And then the lakes, which is the other thing that you showed, the other image, are taking this one step further. What I'm doing is I brought the 1,100 pools together, and the combination of them creates an area, a hole, a void as big as a lake.
Oh, okay.
So this is how the lakes have come into being. The title of the exhibition, which is called Lakes Drying, Tides Rising, is about these sort of the lakes that you see are in the state of sort of, you can't tell whether they're drying or whether there is water, springing from the middle. So it's also tied into the issues of water and the climate changes and that we've been experiencing in the last couple of years.
Well, Nazgol, on that note, I think we're going to end this really enlightening conversation with you. And I cannot thank you enough for the time you put into this and for the great work you're doing. So again, thank you and goodbye.
It was nice talking to you.